Sometimes the reason you do not feel like yourself anymore is not that you have lost yourself. It may be that life changed you faster than you had time to understand. That feeling can be difficult to explain. Because from the outside, you may still look mostly the same. You are showing up, doing what needs to be done, moving through life, still answering people, still functioning. And yet, something feels different. You are in a conversation, and halfway through it, you notice something. You are there, but not fully. Your responses feel slower. Your energy feels different. The version of you in the moment does not feel as familiar as you expected. And quietly, a thought appears. This doesn't feel like me. That thought can stay with you longer than people realize. Because it is not just about one moment. It starts showing up in small ways. How you respond now. How certain situations affect you now. The way your energy no longer feels the same. The way things that once felt easy now feel heavier. And slowly, a question forms. What happened to me? I think that is one of the most painful identity questions people carry quietly. Because it often comes with grief. Not always dramatic grief, but the quiet kind. The kind that misses an older version of you. The version that felt lighter, more certain, more open, more connected to life. So naturally, you try to go back. Back to how you used to think. Back to how you used to feel. Back to how you used to be in the room. But it does not fully work. And that creates a specific kind of discomfort. Because it starts to feel like something important is missing. But what if it is not missing? What if it has changed form? That is a very different question. Because then this is no longer only about loss. It becomes a question of response. How has life shaped you? How have your circumstances changed you? What adaptations have become part of you without you fully noticing? You do not move through life unchanged. Everything affects you. Pressure, responsibility, uncertainty, disappointment, situations that required you to adapt, to become more careful, more alert, more contained, more measured. And over time, those adaptations stop feeling temporary. They start becoming part of how you move through the world. Not because you consciously chose them, but because you needed them. That matters. Because many people compare who they are now to a version of themselves that existed under completely different conditions. Different pressure, different responsibilities, different uncertainty, different emotional weight. So, of course, you feel different now. You are not living in the same internal climate. I think this is the part most people miss. They remember an older version of themselves, but they do not compare the context that version lived inside. They remember feeling lighter, but they forget how much less they were carrying. They remember feeling more certain, but they forget how many fewer decisions they were holding. They remember feeling more spontaneous, but they forget how much less caution life had trained into them at that point. That is not weakness, that is context. And context changes people, sometimes quietly, sometimes gradually enough that you do not notice, until one day you just feel unfamiliar to yourself. I have seen this happen in ordinary ways. Someone becomes more withdrawn after a season of constant pressure. Someone becomes more cautious after too many things went sideways. Someone becomes more tired, less open, less expressive, not because that is their true self disappearing, but because life asked their nervous system to reorganize around what happened. That is a gentler and more accurate way to see it. Not, what is wrong with me? But, what have I had to become in order to keep moving through what life has asked of me? That question changes the tone completely. Because now you are not judging yourself from the outside. You are trying to understand yourself from the inside. That is where softness begins. And it is also where clarity begins, because once you stop idealizing the old version of you for a moment, you can start seeing the current version more honestly. Maybe this version of you is more tired because it has carried more. Maybe this version is slower because it has learned caution. Maybe this version is less open because it has been trying to stay safe. Maybe this version is not broken. Maybe it is responding. That does not mean you stop wanting reconnection. It does not mean you stop missing parts of yourself. It does not mean every change should simply be accepted without question. It means you stop treating change itself as proof of failure. That is a very important difference. So instead of asking, "Why don't I feel like myself anymore?" ask something more useful. What has changed in my life that may have changed how I feel? Do not rush that question, because the answer may explain more than you think. Not just one moment. A whole phase. A whole set of adaptations. A whole emotional climate you have been trying to survive without properly naming. Once that becomes clearer, something softens. You stop trying to force yourself back into who you were. You stop demanding that your current self perform like an older version built for different conditions. And instead, you begin to understand who you are now. What this version needs. What this version is protecting. What this version has had to carry. That is not giving up on yourself. That is how reconnection starts. Because real reconnection does not usually come from forcing yourself back. It comes from meeting yourself honestly where you are now. Then something deeper becomes possible. Not a performance of the old you. A relationship with the current you. And from there, life begins to feel less like a loss and more like a transition. That word matters. Transition. Because transition does not mean gone forever. It means something is still moving, still taking shape, still becoming understandable. So if you have been feeling like you are not yourself anymore, pause. You may not have lost yourself. You may have changed in response to what life has asked of you. And once you begin to understand that, you can start reconnecting. Not with who you were, but with who you are now and who you may be becoming next. Sometimes the healing is not in going back. Sometimes it is in finally understanding why the current version of you feels the way it does, and meeting that version with more honesty, less panic, and less shame. That may be where the feeling of me begins to return. Not as recovery of the past, but as reconnection in the present.